All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. We'd love you to support this show. Please like, follow, and subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Your likes and subscription helps us to grow and attract interviews and content. So please retweet and share our posts. Your contributions are appreciated. Hey, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. We're not doing any clickbait titles for this episode today. It is Refocused, Hotter Than Hell at 50, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Kiss's second studio album released in October 1974. Today, I am joined by Marcus Almighty, Mark, 69th Blizzard Ken.
Hello.
The lunatic from the far, far north of the world, Daniel. We's on the board. You say, well, it's like you're gonna have my kidneys with beans, and I got a cassette here. So this is going back to 1985, and when I started becoming a fan, I bought these albums according to colorful covers, and this one had a colorful cover. Obviously, I think I got Rock and Roll Over before Hotter Than Hell, but Hotter Than Hell certainly was up there in terms of onboarding my back catalog for Kiss. Mark, going back in time for when you were becoming a fan, where does Hotter Than Hell fit into kind of the, your story, your personal history?
Well, I kind of got into this album a little bit later than normal. I mean, my entryway was sort of like, I got the single for Lick It Up first when I was young. And then I got Alive from my sister for Christmas that year. And then, I got a bunch of other records. I was kind of more into the 80s stuff at that time, so I was very young, and that's where I got into them. But then I came back to this album a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, I've always kind of enjoyed this record, and I'm sure we'll get into it in more detail. But it was a bit later. I think I ended up getting the first album, and I think even Dressed to Kill before I got this one.
Also, we've made it through our first participants without insulting the audience. Good job, Mark. Moving on to Ken. Your onboarding point for Hotter Than Hell way back in the day.
Yeah, it had to be 77, sometime 77, or it could have been even 78, because I was, going back in the catalog after getting my first album, Live 2. So I think Hotter Than Hell came probably after. I'm sure I got the first album before Hotter Than Hell, and I got some of the other ones like Rock and Roll Over before that even. So when going back to Hotter Than Hell, it was kind of in getting that one, it was kind of a shock, hearing that one, because it was a little, the sound of it was different than the rest, kind of like, Destroyer was kind of a shock in a way too, but Hotter Than Hell was a shock, but it was a great, hard rocking album when I first got it. So.
Yep, very, very cool. We'll be going into all the details over the songs as we go through its rankings. G. Chupp, Born to Be Wild. That's a great name, by the way. Bill Phelps, thanks for joining us live. And if you haven't chimed in on the comments, get in there with comments as we go through this episode, because we love to include your participation. Daniel, I haven't forgotten about you. You as someone who came on board in 1945 like me. When were you first introduced to Hotter Than Hell?
Well, for me, it was at the beginning. It was no makeup Kiss. That was it for me. So I started off with Animalize Asylum, and later on I bought Crazy Nights as a new record. And then one of my friends, both his parents were doctors, so they had a lot of money. He just bought the whole Kiss catalog while I was, saving up money to buy a record at a time. He just bought the whole back catalog, and I went over to his place and we listened through it, and much like Ken mentioned, it was a bit of a shocker the first time I listened to it. And I distinctly recall my friend saying, "Wow, Kiss must have been like New Kids on the Block in the 70s. It's all hype. They sound like crap." So I guess initially we weren't very pleased with how the early album sounded. Comparing to Asylum and Crazy Nights and Animalize, there's such a big difference. So I guess we were shocked at first, but later on I learned to appreciate the album.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into, I guess, the first point of discussion about Hotter Than Hell and celebrating is that it stands out for its sonics and its sound, in comparison with the first album and Dress to Kill, which were both, obviously more standard in kind of their sonic presentation. There's something weird about this album, and in rock and roll, there are weird albums that crop up due to production techniques and other things that occurred during the recording process. Under the Blade, Twisted Sister, that got redone. Um, Metallica and Justice for All, where the bass is left off and it sounds weird. Saint Anger, another one from Metallica, for having a weird sound, and I guess Sonic Boom would be another one for Kiss, or even Carnival of Souls. So there are albums that the fans debate the sounds and whether remastering them or redoing them from scratch using what are now AI techniques and other things that are available are worthwhile as doing, or whether the sound of this album is so imprinted on our brains at this point that it is what it is, and we have to just weigh it for how it is. And for me, Destroy Resurrected kind of proves that fucking around with classic albums doesn't always work, because I don't go
Yeah.
back to that. That is not a go-to listen in any sense. Metallica didn't mess around with Injustice for All for their box
What do you
set.
think about the remasters from '97? Any improvement there?
For Kiss?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a definite improvement, and there was also an improvement on Double Platinum for the sonics for the songs from the album that were featured. But every time you fiddle around with it, I'm guilty of it. I know there's one that's going around now to celebrate it, the whole album remastered.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go back because it would not sound natural. It's like the new Queen, where they've auto-tuned Freddie Mercury. It's like you just can't fuck around with stuff that you've listened to for 50 years and change. I got to start with Mark on this. Mark, put on your producer and creator hat, to give your opinion.
Well, the one thing about this record, and I'm sure this is not going to be some big shock to everybody, is obviously we're going to be talking about the sonic the unquality sound of this album compared to the first and the third one. Now, I've always had these a theory on this, and I've read lots of things where they're saying that they were changing monitors on a daily basis, so the engineers and the producers couldn't get used to the sound of the studio. But I think it boils down to one thing mainly, is that first record, Kerner and Weiss went in, did it in a studio they were very familiar with. They had everything up. They knew where everything was, how everything sounded in the rooms, and they got a pretty decent sounding, sound out of it. They had limited time, so they couldn't fiddle around with it as much as they could have. But they got a decent sound. Then you had Mr. Bogart, who did Dress to Kill at Electric Lady, a studio that he was very familiar with, knew how to how everything was in there. It was a top quality studio. Everything was running perfectly, so they got a very good sound there. Then they went to Village Recorders in California to do Hotter Than Hell, and it was a place that admittedly they weren't too familiar with. They didn't know much about the gear. The gear was changing all the time in there, and from experience myself, if you're not familiar with a studio and the way it operates or how the sounds are and stuff like that, you'll never be able to get it as optimal a sound as you could if you were in a familiar surrounding, or at least familiar with the gear. And if you're changing stuff on a constant basis, you can't get settled into a way of working. And I think that was a very huge hindrance with this record, I feel.
Yeah, and again, while I've kind of compared messing with it to Destroyer Resurrected, I think it sounds, as an album, for the sonic fingerprint that it clearly has, it sounds good. You can hear guitars, you can hear differentiation between the instruments. So in terms of producing those basic elements, it sounds well balanced. There are a couple little nuances that could be fixed, but again, I think there's a reason that Mark pretty much nails of working in an unfamiliar location, working fast. Again, we've got some studio invoices that really do help illustrate how quick the process was taking place. But Ken, what do you think about the sonic discussion, and how it stands out?
Yeah, it's kind of become a thing where people talk about this one as it's the muddy production and that sort of thing. It kind of actually, in the end, thinking about it, it actually kind of makes it better in certain cases. with some of the writing of the songs, the way they sound. So yeah, I would like to hear it more of a clean production, but maybe that would ruin it. Um, it's kind of
No.
cool. I think there needs to be, if there's a box set, I think there needs to be a remix so we can hear it how it maybe it could have sounded, um, and hopefully not too much cleaned up. But that would be really cool. It was a shock, but that I guess you could say it grows on you. After a certain amount of listens, those first listens, after the shock is over, it grows on you. And you're used to hearing these songs this certain way and this certain sound. So, I listened to it, a couple times the other day, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So,
Daniel, how about you on the Sonic discussion?
Well, I think it's been done to death. It doesn't sound good. Neither does the first album. And I have no love for how the two first albums sounds. The material, on the other hand, there's loads of cool stuff on this album. And we've ranked the album now, or the songs, and I was surprised at the high rankings I gave it. Because there are a lot of good songs on this album, but they're kind of hidden. And for me personally, I had to rediscover them during the early 90s when Kiss played them live. For example, Hotter Than Hell on the Revenge tour sounded just like a brand new song. Really cool and heavy. And later on they played Going Blind at the Foundations Forum in 93. Sounded awesome. They played it on Most Wanted on MTV Europe. Just Paul and Gene, and it was an awesome song. So many of these songs I missed when I heard the album. It wasn't like my friend said. It sounded like it didn't sound good. But then I heard, Parasite by Anthrax later on, and whoa, there's a heavy metal song on Harder Than Hell, and then I went back. So I think Harder Than Hell has, of course, sonic problems that can never be dealt with in a proper way. You have to find other sources if you want to hear clear sound or heavy guitars or stuff like that. But there's loads of different versions of Harder Than Hell from Kiss if you go to the live material. So there's always something that you can find that is up your alley. And the material is great on this album. I especially like the dark stuff on this album.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the dark stuff and the sound of the album actually just helps magnify how dark and brooding and kind of, Black Sabbath-y, some of listen to that first Sabbath album in terms of having a dark tone.
That's a good example.
Yeah. Or Blue Share as well for, some of the sounds of heavy, dark music. And this really stands out in kind of the mountain, kind of vein. To a certain extent. But Mark, as we're going through those studio sheets, we see the three main outboard gear effects that seem to have been deployed on the album, at least from the studio sheets that I do have. So we've got the Eventide phaser, which is just a generic phaser box from the time, which is very common. They used it on the first album as well. There's also the parametric EQ, so that's just again an outboard EQ, right?
Yeah.
And parametric sounds math.
Yeah, well, basically, the graphic EQ is, as you know, it has sliders for individual frequencies that you can either increase or decrease. The parametric EQ is more dial-based EQ, where you can go and sweep through different frequencies, whether if you do let's say a low mid, where it goes from 250 to let's say 800, you can sweep through there, and you can either increase it or decrease it. So it's a different kind of equalizer, but that's more for precise EQing, whereas the graphic EQ, you can people use the graphic more to shape stuff, whereas the parametric was used more for finding a certain thing that's bothersome and trying to remove it out of the sound, more or less.
And then the third effect that I'm really not familiar with, I have read up on it just like you have, is the Cooper Time Cube. Just give people a brief rundown of what that was and what it was used for, because now you've got plugins and all that shit to do any of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, and this is reading right off of the site that I looked it up on. It says the Cooper Time Cube sends live audio through long pieces of tubing, not unlike a garden hose, to create a time delay. The 2x2 plywood housing is filled with coiled tubing. The Shure mic capsules of the SM57 variety at both ends of the line are used as speakers and pickups on a series of tooled aluminum blocks with tuned screws at various places to tune the delay to a relatively flat response. So, and it's basically it's just an early version of a delay. It says here the limited feature set of 14 milliseconds, 16 milliseconds, or a combined 30 milliseconds meant that it was less flexible than the tape-based delay, like an Echoplex. So it was like a different sort of flavor of delay, more for shorter sounds, almost like slapback stuff. So it's just a different tool that they could refer to if they wanted to use some sort of delay in the sound.
Yeah, Echoplex has become a big thing to Kiss's
Oh, yeah.
sound overall, going down the road. But these are the early days. You know, Paul gets his guitar stolen, his favorite LeBou V, right at the beginning of the sessions, and that probably has an impact on it. Ace is experimenting, and he's also crashed a car. So you've got all of that
The first
going
of
on.
many.
And then you've got all of them away from New York City for the first extended time, recording in a different location, going East Coast to West Coast. One thing that's interesting is the sound of the demos. And we've got demos for Baby Let Me Go. So Let Me Go Rock and Roll from the Bell Sound Studio demos of September 1973. We got Watching You, left over from the Kramer demo. We've got Going Blind, Gene's original 71 demo, which you can listen to on the volume. It's on YouTube now. But there were 4 other demos recorded at Mino Sound Studios in White Plains. If I said that wrong, sue me. Mainline, Parasite, All the Way, and Who's Your Baby, which no doubt we'd expect to hear on a Super Deluxe treatment were one to, eventually come down the road. So again, it looks like a lot of those like kind of final songs are the ones that are just being put together really quickly. It's a road album when you think of it. There's only 3 of the 10 songs are from the past, and everything else seems to be new. And there's some great song stories around it, but that's all been talked about and written elsewhere. And we really want to just get into talking about this album today. So, Julian, shut up. Let's open up the spreadsheet and let's get started. Ken, let's start with you on production. We've got Lonnie's scores for all of this, so the full panel is chiming in with the resultant. But run us through the production, cohesiveness, cover art and packaging, singles and taste, and you can break it up if you want, and we'll just go around on. I guess we've talked about production, but cohesiveness.
Yeah, well, just quickly, I know you're going to keep cohesiveness, but production, I gave it a 2 out of 5. Because of the muddy production, because I think obviously it could have been better, so that's why it kind of got a lower score for that, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. Let's see, cohesiveness. It's cohesive. 4 out of 5 for me. Pretty darn cohesive album. It sounds like, for the most part, all the songs belong together. There's no crazy left turn on the album, so one song is sticking out like a sore thumb kind of thing. So it's very cohesive. And then cover art and packaging, I gave it 4 out of 5. I like it. Look, this thing it's kind of
look at that back cover as well.
It's
the back
cool
cover
and
looks
different,
fantastic, doesn't it?
And the Japanese kind of theme kind of going on in there, around here, and rising, flag, whatever, rising sun flag, that kind of thing, part of it. It's all cool. So I think that's a neat cover that they did. So give that 4 out of 5. And then singles selection, I gave a 3 out of 5 on that one. I thought it's could have been changed a little bit, but I thought they're okay selection. I kind of understand it. I guess they're not there's no real song that's going to go on AM radio and be a hit song off of this album. It's not that type of album, I don't think. So then my overall taste is a 3 out of 3, definitely, because I love this stuff. It is Kiss. It is the prime kind of classic Kiss stuff.
Nice. Daniel, what about you on all of those metrics?
Well, I just have to piggyback off of Ken because I had the exact same score, except that I had the singles a bit lower, a 2 for
Oh, wow.
singles. Otherwise, it was the exact same thing all the way through, and how he motivated his answers is the exact same thing as well. But thing I wanted them to lead off with Harder Than Hell as the lead off single. That was my only complaint. That's why I ranked the single selection as a 2. Otherwise, it was exactly as Ken said. So he was right, Ken.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Daniel.
Me too.
Would be reminder about Black Sabbath's Born Again album. That's another album that's got supposed production issues with it, but it's kind of firmly imprinted on our brains. So that's a good one. Mark.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm pretty close to what everybody else did. I mean, production, I gave it a 2. Like I said before, I don't have to go through it again. Just there were issues with it, so I gave it a 2. Cohesiveness, I gave it a 5 out of 5. I mean, this is one of those records that even though it sounds the way it does, but it sounds the exact same way through the whole record. It sounds. It's you can tell this is an album. It's not like they recorded something 2 years ago and brought it in and dumped it onto this record. It sounds like it was all done at the same time. Sounds like it was all mixed at the same time. That to me is cohesiveness. So 5 out of 5. Cover art, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. This is the one album cover that I really love. And like you guys mentioned, I mean, just look at that cover. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I remember once I got this album, this was one of those ones I was looking at daily all the time. Like, wow, look at that, and look at their name. Is that really how they spelled their name in Japanese? I was like going so detailed into it, like checking this album cover out. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great album, back, front, everything. And the singles, you know, there was only one single. I mean, really, what can you say? They could have picked pretty much anything out of this, you know, and we probably would have thought the same thing. I just gave it a 3 out of 5, mainly because I thought that Let Me Go. I think that even though, like you guys said, that nothing would be probably played on radio, I still think, though, in the back of their minds, and even Bogart's mind, they were keeping their fingers crossed that something would get picked up because they wanted the band to be successful. I mean, we're all saying, oh, they would never get played, but they wanted something played. Don't fool yourself. They wanted something on the radio. And the closest thing probably would have been in their minds this, because it was a short song, 2 minutes in and out. Maybe AM would play it because it's not a long song. And maybe they thought that was the one that was going to do it, but clearly it didn't. But it's okay song. Taste, I gave it a 3 out of 3. So I think I was pretty generous about this. Oh, and one last thing really quickly. Mr. Where's Drago there? Just letting you know, I've sent you an email. So please check your email today, my friend. Thank you.
All right, nice. Yeah, Mark, actually, you ranked this cumulatively in terms of scores the highest out of all of us, with Lonnie only just behind you on 42 points, and then Ken and me both on 39, and Daniel just slightly behind. So all very positive. For me, I've talked about the production. I think the production's fine, but the muddy sound is a different matter. I'm trying to separate production from overall sound, just because I don't think it's entirely fair. Cohesive enough, 4 out of 5. It's a very consistent album. Cover art is fantastic, 4 out of 5. It's going to look absolutely amazing with both treatments on the Hotter Than Hell 50th anniversary merch. I can't wait to see those. I haven't bought them. So if you have, please do show them off, because I'm sure they're going to be absolutely outstanding, because these colors, this layout, this whole design aesthetic really tends itself to popping. Single selection, I gave it 2. Let Me Go Rock and Roll was not a good song. It's a jam song. It's a throwaway. Not a good one to throw out onto radio. Look at Aerosmith and what they were putting out as singles in '74. Train Kept a Rollin'.
What would you have picked then, Julian? What would it
Same
be
Old Song and Dance and SOS Too Bad. That's some hardcore stuff right there from Aerosmith. So I would have been going with something like Got to Choose or Coming Home. You know, still kind of upbeat and not going too dark into like the Strange Ways or Parasites, but certainly and certainly not Going Blind. But you know, for what it is, again, it wasn't exactly out there. It wasn't getting played. Kiss wasn't getting played. They were in the transition between the Warner distribution and independent, and what the accounts say that only 125 singles got sold non-promotionally anyway, so a bit of a non-issue. So overall, a very positive bunch of scores for this, and that's, of course, I think out of 60 in the top section. Let's jump in. I'll do the ranking of the songs at the end, as usual, so please do remind me. Let's jump straight in with Got to Choose. And Daniel, let's go with your thoughts on that song.
Well, you know, when I grew up, Kiss always had the best song as the opener. You had, or at least one of the best songs. My early albums were Animalized, Creatures of the Night, Asylum, Crazy Nights, and so on. And you know, Creatures of the Night, what an opening track. I've Had Enough in the Fire, ooh, that's great. King of the Mountain, oh my lord, that's a good song. And what's the first song in Crazy Nights? Is it Crazy Nights?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
Title track.
And
Yeah.
that's the lead-off single. So they always start off with a track, and then when I listen to this album, kind of a slow song with chords or riffs that sounds like saxophones. So I think this is the completely wrong choice to have as an opening song on a Kiss album. But that's because I grew up in the 80s. So what the hell is this? I would have opened with something like Hotter Than Hell, or maybe Coming Home like they did on MTV Unplugged. I think that worked kind of good on that album. But not this slow, kind of lethargic song. And the first time I liked it was when I heard Mark play the riffs on it a year back when we did a riff episode. That was the first time. Well, it's sort of a cool song. So it's not a favorite of mine. I think it's kind of middle of the road.
Okay, Mark, since you played the riff to it a while back, what do you say on Got to Choose?
Well, I understand where Daniel's coming from with this. I mean, in comparison to the songs that he mentioned, obviously this is one is kind of a subpar to those ones, of course. And I love how he referred to the saxophone, because the one he just mouth mimicked it there, it does have a sort of saxophone to it, effect to it. And that again goes all right back to what we were talking about earlier about the engineering of it, that those sort of odd mid frequencies that they put on these guitars are just like, oh, what were they thinking? They could have had such a better guitar sound for this record, but that is also why it sounds so saxophony, because it has this tone into it. So you don't want to have that on the guitar. So for me personally, I put lyrics to 3 on this. Not the worst lyrics that Paul's done, and it's not overly cheesy, I don't think. I mean, it's for this time period, it's fine. Musically, I gave it a 3.5. I think it's pretty good, middle of the road. I like the little transition part, that dan 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 dan. I thought that's a cool kind of riff that goes in between the verses and the choruses and stuff. It's cool. I like the way he kind of wrote that part. Definitely not the strongest song on the record, but I think it musically was written very well. I gave it a 3 for taste, so you know, it's not a bad ranking. 19.5 from what I remember. So it's pretty good song. Oh, and one last thing, really quickly. Sorry, I hate to do this again, but Mr. Drago there, I did respond to the one that you sent as well with the information that you requested, and that's the last I'll talk of it. Sorry.
Okay, Algonquin Roundtable here. All right, moving on. Ken.
Yeah, so I got to choose. Lyrics, I gave it 3 out of 5. Standard lyrics. Melody, 4 out of 5. I think it has a pretty good melody. And my taste is a 3 on that one. 3 out of 3 for that. So it's a good song. I do agree with Daniel that it probably shouldn't have been the lead off song. I would have rather just let off with Parasite. I think that would have been a great lead off, to tell you the truth. So yeah, it's a good song. It's not my, I think when I first heard it, I thought, it's interesting song, a little different, but it's a little bit of a plotter, I guess, in a way. But it's still a good song, real good song.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the lead-off song question, which I didn't consider asking everyone. But we're used to kind of Kiss coming out with a punch. And Got to
Yes.
Choose is not a punch. It's a very free-sounding song, I think, Free was pretty
Yeah,
big
a
back
little
then.
bit.
I
Hotter
think
than hell
Paul
is
has
good.
copped to ripping, a little bit, uh, for that song. But Got to Choose is one of my all-time favorite songs by Kiss in the catalog. I absolutely lost my shit when they did it at one of the acoustic sound checks because it was just like I was all SpongeBob-y, big eyes, rainbows. I was like so happy. It was like, thank you.
Unicorns.
Yeah, thank you, Kiss. You've just crossed another thing off my list for me. It is a great song. I love the description of the saxophones because of the sound of it, and it does sound different because of that, but it's got attitude as well. So my scores on this one were 4 for lyrics. I think it's got a really um, good kind of message and structure in there. Melody, superlative, and taste. Obviously, I like it, so I gave it 24 out of 30. It is not a perfect song for me on this album when I go and measure it against some of the other songs that I give scores to today. Lonnie gave it perfect, so Lonnie and me, we're
Whoa!
both like we're totally
Lonnie,
SpongeBobbing
perfect.
on this one. Absolutely
Wow.
perfect, and it sounds even better on a live, doesn't it? And shame on
Oh
Kiss,
yeah.
there was not a single song from this album performed at the very last show.
Yeah.
Fact check
That's,
me on that, but if
I should have done at least Parasite.
I'm
That's
correct, I
terrible.
think.
That's terrible.
Yeah, so
Who knows?
shame.
Shame.
All right, let's move on. Unless anyone else, what would be what do you think should have been the opening track if you didn't like this as the opening track on the album? I think Hotter Than Hell would have been perfect. Just come straight out,
That's my
up
biggest
tempo,
one.
title, Mark.
I think I would have went with Parasite.
Yeah, I think both will work.
I said
Ken
Parasite.
said Parasite.
All right, 2 Parasites and 2 Hotter Than Hells, and we'll have
Hotter
to
Than
find
Hell,
out from Lonnie after the fact. All right, moving on to Parasite. Daniel, let's start with you. Do you have enough sustenance to make it through talking about this song?
Sustenance. I don't know what that means.
Food,
I hear the
like
rattling
energy.
of like the food wrappers and you getting
I'm
snacks
sorry.
going.
I need to explain. Me and my girlfriend, we're on this kind of sugar-free thing. We're not supposed to eat sugar, but she doesn't know that I have bought a lot of candy, and I'm out here, way off. I have a small room way off in our house, so she doesn't know that I bought this. So that's
You
why I
can't hear
have
that
to
rattling from that.
No, she can't.
So
hear
you're
me.
cheating,
She can't-
basically.
So I'm cheating now. So I'm just, eating like hell. I haven't eaten candy for 2 weeks, so that's why I'm eating this kind of stuff. So sorry about
Gonna get
that.
into a sugar
But
rush.
yeah,
Well,
so I just hope she doesn't pop in here. I have to close the drawer there so she doesn't see that candy bag. Okay, well, let's Parasite. I guess this is my favorite Ace Frehley song of all time, I think. And going back in my history, the first time it really hit me was when I bought this bootleg. I was at the market and flickering through the CDs, and I found this Brooklyn Rock City, it was called. Kiss, a club date from New York, 92, I think it was. And I brought that CD home and I put it on, and I heard Parasite with that, Revenge lineup, and I was floored. So I went back to my band and I said, we have to play Parasite. And they put on Harder Than Hell. This doesn't sound that cool. So I showed them the Brooklyn Rock City Parasite with Eric Singer on drums, and they went, well, it's kind of a cool song. And I like, the parts in Parasite. There's a lot of cool parts to play on the guitar. You don't have to be as good as Mark when playing this song. You just have to be average, and you can make it sound really heavy. And also the Anthrax version was one that opened up my eyes for this one, opened up my mind, and I truly love this song. And I kind of like how it sounds on Harder Than Hell, even though I prefer it with maybe Bruce and Eric live. But I gave it 4 for lyrics, 5 for melody, and 3 for taste, of course. I think and also the solo. I really enjoyed the Ace Frehley solo, and the way Bruce put a sort of a modern spin on that solo was even greater, I think. So I love the way they played it through the 90s, the early 90s, and unfortunately Gene sang this song. I don't think it would have sounded as cool if Ace Frehley sang it. He did a version later on, Ace Frehley, on one of his Origin albums, and it was a bit subpar when compared to the Kiss version. So I think it was a correct choice. Have Gene sing it, even though it's a perfect Ace Frehley lyric. I always liked the Ace Frehley lyrics when he was kind of autobiographical, like Parasite and Cold Gin and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So such a great song. I love this song. It's a gem.
No, he still knows all about the Parasite ladies, old Ace. All right, Ken. Parasite.
Yeah, Parasite. I love the song. It's funny is I rank it exactly the same as Got to Choose, though I like it better. So does that make sense? No, but it's just the way I ranked it. Yeah, and the lyrics again around a 3 out of 5, and the melody 4 out of 5. Mostly because I think the riffs on this song, and my taste is a 3 out of 3, because this is the type of Kiss music I want to hear. So yeah, it ranks at 21 score, same as Got to Choose. Even though I would say I like Parasite a lot better than Got to Choose, but it's still ranking the same. That's okay.
I like Parasite a lot. It's the only song on the album that I give a perfect score to today, 30 points. It's a song that I love playing on guitar. I can't play the solo, but that little pre-break leading into the solo is so freaking fun to play, as is the main riff. Yeah. It's one of those super Kiss songs that's I just grab the guitar like She or Love Her All I Can for me, because I'm very limited in terms of the Kiss stuff that I actually can play and do play. It is just perfection all around. The subject matter, and it was written about groupies following them from town to town. It's a road song. It's an attitude song. It's got a touch of that 70s machismo going, but it was like they were trying to get away from these chicks who just wouldn't leave them alone. It's almost like that. Who was that artist recently? Chrissy Hind, who told the people in the front row, we're going to start moving other people into the front row because I'm sick of looking at the same people's faces. Well, it was like that for Kiss in 74, that all these chicks would follow them from town to town, and they couldn't get rid of them. So it's got a great story to it. It's a great song. It's super cool all through Kiss's whole history. With that, whichever lineup has done it just as live, and it's been a real centerpiece. And I think Ace still does that as well. So again, great Ace song. Ace was on fire at this time with his contributions. They may not have been as numerous as Gene and Paul, as meat and potatoes of the band, but when he gave something. You had Cold Gin on the first album. You have, for me, Parasite on the second. Mark.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Parasite is one of the gems on the record for sure. Everything on this song is pretty much near perfect. Lyrics I gave 4.5 out of 5. I think the lyrics are well written, clear to the point. Musically, I think it's perfect 5 out of 5 for me. I've always loved playing this song. We used to play it and cover it in my bands that I was in all the time. We would always I would always prefer to do the Bruce Kulick solo, like from the Alive 3 era stuff. I love doing it that way, so we always did it that way, and it was extremely fun song to play. So it was great fun. I gave it a 3, of course, on taste, so almost perfect score of 28.5. So it's definitely high ranking, and this is one of the examples of the song where the production absolutely works for this song.
Do I have to change the title of the episode now, Mark, to Bruce Kulick plays the solo better on Parasite?
No.
I didn't say better. I said I just prefer to play it that way. I just preferred. I didn't say it was better.
And again, we both said it. Every lineup has done justice to this song in its own way. So, it's a Kiss song. All right, let's move on quickly before I get myself into trouble with that, because that was some funny shit. That was real funny shit this week for me.
Yes.
All right, I got to go first with this, and we'll talk about this at the end as well. And for Ken, keep this in mind as a summary question that I need to ask about who's the MVP on this album.
Okay.
This is Gene's song, and this is an ancient one, Going Blind, and I only give it 12 points. I mean, it's a cool song, but it really is a bit shrug of the shoulders. Meh. A cool riff, but there's no rhythm doing anything. It's like middle of the road, kind of thrown in there. And I know they were short of songs. So it's just one of those things. It's like, why is this here? I mean, it's a nice kind of dynamic change, but Going Blind doesn't really get my attention until 1994, Foundations Forum. You know, when it suddenly re-injected and reinvigorated
93.
with 93, was it? Yeah. Thank you. You know, when it came out in the bootlegs in the 90s, and all of a sudden it's been given a new kind of energy and a dynamic, then I started paying attention to it more. And as I learned more about the history of the song, it became more relevant. But here on Hotter Than Hell, it's just, it's not one of my favorites, but it's not a song that I dislike. I don't, you know, it's just middle of the road. Mark.
Yeah, ironically, I think me and you have the exact same score on this. And I agree with like 90% of what you said. I mean, this is a song that seems to kind of stick out as kind of odd. I mean, I understand that, you know, like you said, they were short on songs, they needed stuff, so they put it on there. But I think that this song, electrically, has never done anything for me. I think that my preferred version of the song has always been the MTV Unplugged version of this. I thought that's where it kind of sits, and where it's the most comfortable sonically and listening wise. I think that's how they should have did it, in my opinion. But you know, at that time they wanted to do something more rocking and hard, so they did it electric. But lyrically, I gave it a 3, which I think is being a bit generous. Lyrically, it isn't his best work. Musically, I gave it a middle of the road 3 as well, and I gave it a 2 as taste. So again, a 12 there. But yeah, I think that if they had a little bit more time, I would think that they would have put something in there in replacement of that song.
Yeah, good point by Where's Drago. You know, about it coming back out as a grungy song, and it bridges, you know, Rainbow, Wicked Lester, and Gene pre any of those. So it really is one of those weird songs that's made the transition through various related lineups. Ken, Team Gene, tell us why you gave this 90 points.
I didn't give
90 points.
No, I give 27 points. 27. Because
that's
a
perfect score, Ken. I also gave it 27.
Yeah, the first time I remember the first
30
time.
30 is perfect.
Yeah, but 30 is perfect for this.
Yeah, that's true.
Speed, but yeah, I remember the first time hearing it, and the little interlude, or you want a little bit, but the little guitar notes in it, you know, the kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which made me sing. I was like, that sounds like Japanese music if you think about it. And I thought, wow, it so matches what I'm looking at the cover, and I'm like, it sounds kind of a little Japanese kind of tune in that the way they played that little guitar part there. I guess it must have been Ace playing that part. But I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I didn't like it as much as I liked the other songs initially. I think Hotter Than Hell I liked the most when I first, you know, listened to the album. But the song grew on me over time, and I know the unplugged version is probably the best way to do this song. A lot of songs are better at live, even as we all know. They all seem to come alive when they do them live. So I'm saying alive too much. Anyway, it's a word salad, right? So anyway, the lyrics, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I thought this is kind of interesting too. It's like, what's going on here? Why is, you know, I'm 93 or 16. It's like, wait a minute here. What's going on with this old guy?
That was Paul.
Yeah.
You know, okay, yeah, he gave up but so anyway, even that element to it, the lyrics, I bumped it up to a 4 because I thought, it made me think about it a little bit. the melody, I give it 5 for melody because I love it. That's why it kind of ranks higher for me. And the taste, again, I love the song. It's Kiss, full Kiss. So it got a 27 for me.
Yeah, great point on some of the kind of Oriental sounding music. That
Yeah, it's an Oriental kind of
cover,
sound
because that it's not
on
only
that
on
riff.
Going
That
Blind,
little,
but they have a riff on Hotter Than Hell that also, kind of echoes that. Rush did the same with Passage to Bangkok. Have these sounds
yeah,
kind of-
exactly. Very
yeah.
good
Yeah.
pull there.
Daniel, I haven't
That's
forgotten you.
true.
Great. I think Going Blind is such a unique gem in Kiss catalog because it's a slow song. It's sort of a ballad, but it's still really dark, I think. And people talk about that line, I'm 9316. That's a metaphor, guys. I mean, when you're feeling older than the one you're dating, it feels like you can't connect. He is not actually 93. Come on, guys. but
I don't
you
think
also
Gene was
mentioned-
interested in connecting.
No, but you mentioned the Gene bass in this one. One of you did, and I think this was probably the first time I understood that Gene could play around on a bass and create some unique stuff. And I think the bass line in this one, that one. And then I think it kind of reminds me of a Paul Stanley solo going through the whole song. Paul Stanley's solos are often very, melodic and rememberable. The stuff he did on "I Want You," the beginning of that one, and so on. So I really like the bass line in this one, and. The first time, I mentioned this earlier, but 94 when they did that thing on MTV, that was the first time I realized that the bass line was so great. So this song for me is like a heavy ballad, and that's hard to do. And I do enjoy the lyrics. For me, the lyrics fit the album. They are sort of dark. And Gene's way of singing this one is kind of cool as well. He sounds sort of sad. It's very uncommon for a Kiss song, So I think it's a unique song, and I'm happy that they brought it out in the early 90s once again, because this was really buried, was never played live or anything like that. But then they rediscovered it in the early 90s or the mid 90s, and I'm glad they did, because if they hadn't played that song on Most Wanted in 94, I might have missed this one, because the sound on Hotter Than Hell is not that great. But when I heard that song, I immediately went back and listened to Hotter Than Hell, and oh my lord, what a cool bass line. And so I actually gave this 27 points, so it's nearly a perfect song for me.
Yeah, and Gene's pretty dark on this album throughout. Lottie gave this one 14 points. He likes the lyrics, very much likes the melody, but he can take it or leave it with a 2 for taste. So, Title track, Hot, Hot, Hotter Than Hell. She's going to leave you well done. Daniel, take us straight back into Hotter Than Hell, please.
Hotter Than Hell would have been my pick for the first single. Mainly because it's the title of the album, much like Lick It Up or something like that. It's a cool song, and we all know the Free story, that he tried to copy one of Free's songs, or he was, inspired by that song. And you do hear the resemblance between the songs. But I think this is a cool Kiss song. I like the pauses, da-da, and then it's quiet. And that outro riff is sort of cool. And it's kind of fun when you look back, when you discovered the songs. For me, it wasn't when I listened to Hotter Than Hell. I had some sort of, in the earlier to mid 90s, it was very popular with the tribute albums. And I recall listening to a tribute album. I think they played like Making Love, and they ended the song with the outro riff to Harder Than Hell, with double bass drums and all sort of stuff, and it sounded like real grungy, which was, popular at the time. And that was the first time I thought to myself, wow, this sounds kind of cool. And then I went back and, yeah, it sounds kind of cool on Harder Than Hell as well. So I like the riffing from Paul. I like the outro, also a great solo from Ace, and a really catchy tune. So once again, Paul nails it. He hits the nail on the head, and he managed to create a really catchy tune early on. So Harder Than Hell, I gave that song 24 points. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, good comment from Bill Phelps here about the re-record from 2006 that was on the Sonic Boom bonus disc, or Jikoku Retsuden, if you bought the Japanese version of that. And of course, the double platinum version of this song sounds very good. Mark, Hotter Than Hell.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked this song. My only gripe with this song is I think it's a little too slow on this album version. It drags a little bit. But other than that, I think from a songwriting perspective, it's pretty good. I like the guitar riffs are good. The lyrics are good. With it, I think it's one of the early Paul gems that we get. I gave lyrics 4, music 4. I think that it's very strong. I obviously gave it a 3. It's a great song, so it ended up being another 24 song, just like Daniel. It's really good. I think again that the only thing that brings it from not being a perfect song is just the tempo, and it's one of those things that I've always blamed Kerner and Weiss for, is that they've had a tendency of taking Kiss songs and dropping them down like 10 beats a minute slower than they should be on record, and that's throughout everything they've done. The first record and this record, they've slowed down stuff which they really should not have. I have no idea why they thought it sounded better slower, but other than that, I think the song is fantastic, and you got to love that gong in the song too. What rock song is not a classic song without a big, huge in there to make it sound very epic? So great idea with that.
Yeah, love the gong. I always loved this song. I think one of the things is the songs that were recorded before they were ever performed live sometimes are slower than they become at live tempo, whereas the stuff that had all been done live and then was recorded was only kind of slowed down slightly just to make it consistent, but not to the degree that some of it was in a reverse situation, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But Hotter Than Hell is a great song, and it just shows how strong Kiss were in the early days. They were cranking out quality material continuously in the studio twice a year, on the road, and just putting together stuff like this with the nuance of stuff like endings with gongs, and that again, the Oriental inspired sounds on the song. And again, it sounds great. It was the B-side to the Let Me Go Rock and Roll single, but I think they, if nothing else, they had that the wrong way around. Very, very good song. I also gave it 24 points. Lonnie likes it a little bit more than us. He gave it the highest score of the panel, 27 points. And he totally digs the music there with giving it 5 points. Ken.
Yeah, this is the song when you were mentioning earlier, Julian, that this is the song that Paul tried to write like the free song, all right now, that song, which is pretty basic. He tried to make a hit out of it. This was the song, like I said earlier, that I felt stood out to me as the most catchiest song when I first heard it. And then the rest of the album, after more listens, grew on me, and then I started liking other songs better than this song. But it's still a well-written song, good song, and like Mark said, it is kind of plodding, kind of like the first album where they had some slower songs, and they should have been faster. The tempo should have been a little bit more. So I give it a 4. For lyrics, and a 3 out of 5 for melody, and the taste is again top 3 out of 3 for a 21. It's a real good song. Just love it. So, again, there's other songs that I think, it should have been the first single. That's the other thing I want to say. I think
But you
it should have
said
been.
Parasite should be the first single.
He came over to my side of the argument. Yay!
No. Actually, no. Parasite should have been the first song. No, first song on the album.
Yeah.
Okay, you mean the first song of the album and the first
single. No, the first single I thought Hotter Than Hell, because when I first played this full album, I thought Hotter Than Hell was like the best song. The very first time listening to it. So I thought that was the most accessible album, or song that should have been put out there as a single. So anyway, good song.
All right, we're KISS fans. None of that sensible stuff, please. All right, keep it greasy. Great observations. I think that all the endings on the songs on this album are great, and that is something. It's not just fade outs or hard endings. There's a bit of character to the endings to all of them, stylistically. So there was attention to detail in crafting complete pieces.
Well, since Lana isn't here, I think Revenge is another album where they put a lot of effort into the endings of the songs.
Well, they put a lot of effort into everything on that album.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
They had to. All right. Closing side A is Let Me Go Rock and Roll. Let's start with, let's go to Mark. Mark, you rank it the least of us.
Yeah, I mean, okay. This song is very much just a basic, almost 12-bar blues structured rock song. It's just very basic in its structure, but it's a fun song. It's definitely one of those songs that I'll admit I jammed it with my bands a couple times in rehearsals just for the fun of it. Lyrically, it's very basic. I mean, as you can tell, it was probably written in like 5 minutes somewhere while Gene was doing his job, that government job he had there, probably writing it there at that time. I gave the lyrics a 2 out of 5 on this. Musically, I gave it a 3. It's nothing special. It's just a straight ahead song in A. A little bit of Chuck Berry riffs here and there, and I gave it a 2. It's not. I don't hate it. It's definitely not a song that I tend to always go back to or look forward to. It's coming up next. Kind of song on the album. I think they structured it in the good spot at the end of the side. I think that's probably where it deserves to be. But live, though, the song is a totally different beast altogether. The energy is different. They extend the middle part, and it just turns into something that's much more fantastical, and something that's much more enjoyable to not only visually when you watch them play it live, but there's a lot of great leads Ace does in that, but all that stuff is missing in the studio version of it. That's why I don't rank it as high. So I just gave this song a 10.
Just a 10. Daniel, you also don't rank it very highly. Same reasons?
No, yeah, I think it's a different beast as well live. I vividly recall the first time I saw it live in '97 on a reunion tour at Stockholm Stadium. I think it was maybe the second or third song in the set, and I thought, what? Are they going to play Let Me Go Rock and Roll? I think they started with Deuce, and I'm not sure if it was the second or third song, but it was really early in the set, and I think this will never work, and people went bananas. I remember, being moved by the audience, 10, 20 feet to the left and then 20 feet to the right. People went crazy for that blues riff. So live, it really worked, but on the album, it's not one of my favorites. Actually, it's one of my least favorites on this album. It's really short as well. Is it even a song? Is it like 2 minutes and 10 seconds or something like that? Yeah, so they get started and then it ends. So, but the fun thing is, I was participating in a podcast last weekend about Hotter Than Hell, a Swedish podcast, and one of the guys mentioned,
which one? You got to pimp. You got to pimp it.
Okay, the Let Me Know podcast from Sweden. You can actually listen to it. Just use the English translations, and you can follow it on YouTube. So go to Let Me Know podcast, put on the translation, and then you can listen to it. Well, we talked about Hotter Than Hell last weekend, and one of the guys, he mentioned, well, Baby. you know, when you learn a new language, it's really hard. Baby means, you know, a little kid. Yeah. So for him, when he listened to the song, it was about someone trying to, you know, get some time off from home. You know, leaving your kid at home. Oh, you're such a oh, my little baby. Can I be alone? Let me go. Let me be alone. Let me live. I think that was so funny when he talked about that. So that's how you can interpret a song when you listen to something that's not your, you know, your native language. So, but Let Me Go Rock and Roll, cool live on the album. Not so much.
Yeah, I'm just looking up because Keep It Greasy mentioned that the single is one of the most expensive, and I can't remember how many thousands of dollars this damn thing did sell for when a copy did go up for sale a few years ago. I think it was, what, 5,000 or more? Something absolutely insane. But the numbers of it are so low.
Crazy.
Yeah, you know, it's a jam. It's a live thing that is better live than on the record. It was great in the early days in the club when they just needed to stretch out a show and just go nuts and just start with a basic song and go wherever you want with it, you know, with instrumental breaks and extended, you know, audience participation things. And that doesn't necessarily translate well into presenting the band as a single or on record. So it's a song that I don't give a ton of points to here, but I do love the vibe of it. It's still got a fun, exciting, you know, it's a great way to close out the first side of the album with up tempo, where there's been a few down tempo songs on here. Turgid might be a word that I'd use. So I gave it 21 points nonetheless, even though I do recognize that it isn't by any means spectacular. Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I give it a 2 for lyrics. I mean, they're pretty, you know, it's basic stuff. And a 4 out of 5 for the melody, because I like rock and roll riff stuff. I like Chuck Berry stuff like that. I love anything that sounds rock and roll, you know, early rock and roll. So I like that, and I give it an 18. The thing is, I thought, you know, I think they should have kept it as like they had the bell sound demo of this, kept more like that, with the longer version. They should have kept the longer version, instead of putting it, you know, out and trimming it down to, you know, to this. So because I heard the bell sound one, I thought, that's what should have been on here. That should have been, you know, the last song on side one, but they didn't do it. They tried to make a single out of it because the other version was too long. They thought, oh, well, we're gonna make a single. They got to cut it down and get rid of the other extra fat or whatever they thought it was. But that's part of the great stuff. The best part of the song is really that extended, you know, riffing and playing around. So, you know, anyway, it's a real good song anyway. I always love it. I gave it an 18.
Yeah, Lonnie ranked it pretty high. I did just fact he gave it 27 points, so he's obviously down with it for its tempo nature. $8,564 for an original Blue Label stock non-promo.
Not even a promo.
No, the promos are
easier to find.
Yeah, much easier. You used to be able to get them for under $100, and now they're a little around or over 100. I did,
really?
and they were this single was reissued with the Filmworks label, and I had one, and they're hard to come by, and it got cracked in the post, and it absolutely broke my heart. Because that was the second one that I'd had, and it was a Alan Zentz master as well, so I wanted to be able to compare the B-side mastering with the album. But there we go. All right, end of side A. Let's move on. Someone keeps texting me, distracting me, reminding me what a cesspool the KissFAQ message board is due to dumbass comments that are often made.
God.
The cesspool.
Never heard that
All
before.
right. Kicking off side B, Parasite.
Parasite.
No, didn't we already do Parasite?
We already did that all the way.
No,
Side B.
all the way. Well, I'm looking at the I've got the tape sitting in front of me. Parasite.
Really?
I don't know what you're
The
doing.
tape?
That is some kind of odd Korean pressing or something.
No, that's a
North Korean pressing.
It's an 82 polygram one. But getting back to the list with the correction now, all the way. We got to start with Ken on this for Team Red. All right,
Team
Team G.
Red, all the way. I really like the song. It's good. Some people don't like it, but I think it's one of his better songs on this album. I gave it a pretty high rank of 21. The lyrics I gave it a little bump up for him. It's better than his standard lyrics. Melody, 3 out of 5. It's in the middle of the road. Again, my tastes. Again, Gene song, real good. Real good Gene song. So it gets a 3 out of 3. So 21. I like it a lot. It's not his best on here, but it's pretty darn good. I always enjoy listening to it.
All right, Lonnie gave this 24 points, so obviously
Nice.
he's big Team Gene. Mark,
Right,
you also
Lonnie.
gave it 24 points.
Yeah, the funny thing is, this song, for whatever reason, the very first time I heard it, it immediately stuck with me for some reason. I mean, when I really think about it, and think about how I analyze songs or Kiss songs in general, it shouldn't be a high ranking song, but it is for me. Lyrically, while it's nothing really to brag about as a lyric, it's fun. I kind of enjoy it. I always thought it was fun. And this is another one that we used to jam as a band. And I guess it's because, I liked singing it with the guys, so that also kind of stuck in my head when I was ranking this. And musically, it's always been fun. It's not a hard song to play, but it has those little moments, just like where Drago says here, the cowbell bit and that, all those little things that make it kind of fun to play and to listen to that. And even like the counting out 1, 2 in the background when Gene counts it in. It's like all these little things that always kind of put a smile on my face when I heard this song. So I've always loved this song, and I was absolutely shocked when they actually played it that one year in the 2000s when they did it during I don't know if they did it during the tour or just
Rock
one
the
show.
Nation, I guess.
Yeah, where they played it, which was like, wow, so I was surprised that they actually pulled that one out. But I gave it a 3.5 for lyrics. I gave it a 4.5, almost perfect for music. Like I said, while it's not the best musically written one, it's always sat really good in my heart, this song, and I've always loved playing it. So 4.5 out of 5, and a 3 for taste. So 24 out of 30 for this one, and I still stick with that. I always love this song, and I sometimes, funny enough, I sometimes put on side B first when I listen to this record because I want to hear this song.
Nice. Well, going from very positive Mark to Daniel.
Uh-oh.
10 points, Daniel.
Yeah,
10
sorry
points.
about that. I guess this is my least favorite on the album.
That's okay.
I gave it 10 points in
Oh,
total.
wow.
Uh, It might have to do with once again, English is my second language, and to me, this was always about a wife beater. You push me, and in the end, I
No
fucking
way.
kill you. So I never liked the lyrics. I had a really hard time getting around those lyrics because for me it was like, well, you got a lot to say. Please shut up before I fucking nail you. So I never liked the lyrics. It was not the way I wanted Kiss to sound. I was more into King of the Mountain, crazy nice. Let's go for it. Let's be a champion. And this song about a wife beater, a sorry ass wife beater. Why don't you just leave that girl and find someone else? Well, you got a lot to say. You push me all the way. One of these days I will nail you.
It's a very 70s thing.
Yeah, so I never liked the lyrics, and also I think the song is kind of slow and lethargic, like a few of the other songs on the album. So I never liked this one, so it's my least favorite. Sorry.
Well, Lonnie totally liked this one. Gave it 24 points as well.
Older.
Me, I gave it 12. And
Good,
Whoa,
good boy,
really?
good boy.
probably, I think my opinion of it, because I always liked the song a lot back in the day, was really colored in 2004, being in the audience in Concord when they whipped this one out live, and the audience just exhaled and sat down.
Oh,
And it was such a meh moment that I don't
I
think
didn't
I've
sit
ever
down.
recovered my love for the
I was
song as
on my
much.
feet.
They
Never
just
recovered.
it just
I
killed
enjoyed
the
it.
set.
Yeah, well, no, it's not a
I
popular
enjoyed this.
song. Yeah.
I enjoyed the shit out of it, but people were
Well,
just sitting there scratching their heads.
Fair
And
weather
it
fans
was
don't know what the hell it is, though.
no, but it
That's
was
the
at
problem.
that moment that I realized some of the truth of what Paul and Gene often pontificate about, and saying that they play what the audience wants
Sure.
to hear. I didn't believe that to that point, and I still have problems with it. But there I was witnessing it being illustrated of what happens when you pull a deep cut out for a normie audience. I mean,
Right.
when they started doing that shit on the cruise, just playing regular sets, then it was just as bad as anything else. So, and even the gems that they'd pull out on the cruise, you would often not see those cruisers going nuts on for the kind of level that I would have expected. I would have been absolutely losing my shit if I'd been in the audience for some of the cruises. But All the Way takes the brunt of that butthurt today. And it's a decent song. 12 Points isn't savaging it by any means. But let's quickly move on to Watching You, which to me is possibly one of the very best Gene songs, even though it's just creepy as hell in a nonsensical kind of way, limping as I do. And I'm watching you. I mean, it's very affirming for people with disabilities that you also can be creepy as hell if you wish. So good for Gene being forward thinking in 1974. But I have this is another song that I love playing the riffs for on the guitar. It is just it's a great song musically and in terms of its attitude and weirdness. So Uncle Gene gets 27 points out of me. Daniel.
Well, I went even further. I gave it 30 points. Because, much like Julian said, I like the lyrics. Weird lyrics. Limping as you do. I'm seeing some, strange guy walking around. And just the line, watching you without no one knowing it, is really... really scary and disturbed, and I think it's in line with the album. I think a lot of songs have this creepy theme. If you listen to Strange Ways, that's another one. Harder Than Hell, not so much, but the title is kind of dark. And Going Blind, I think, is a weird song as well. And I think lyrically, I think this is probably the weirdest album that Kiss ever released, and I like it. And this song is such a classic. Oh, that wasn't me. And of course, it was done to perfection by the Revenge lineup on Alive 3. So if you want to listen to a real... actually, it was perfect on Alive 1 as well, the first one. So what a great song. And it's heavy as hell on Harder Than Hell. This is another song that works well with the Sonics. Like we mentioned earlier, some of the songs benefit from the sound of the album, and this is truly one of those songs. So a perfect score for Watching You.
Yeah, good point on the Sonics. The sound of the production or the sound of the album on this song makes it, gives it that atmosphere, that creepiness. But to that point, you couldn't have one song sounding like this and another song sounding all bright and happy, or the album wouldn't, be cohesive. So, yes. Mark.
Yeah, I also gave it a perfect score, this song. I'll go as far as to say that I believe that this song and Calling Dr. Love are the two perfect Gene Simmons written songs that he's done. This one, I think the riffs are fantastic. I remember we played this one. I played it on the podcast that we did, me and Daniel together when we were doing the riffs. We were playing this one. Always fun to play this. This is another one that it's funny. When I think back to it now, I played a lot of Hotter Than Hell stuff with my bands before. It seems more of this album than anything else, because it had the great combination of simplicity but cool riffs to it. So in this song, it always felt great to play. And again, just much like Daniel, I always tended to go to the late 90s version whenever we'd play it, especially since Bruce would kind of, ritz up the lead lines a little bit more on this, and also being that we were a metal band that played stuff like Nevermore and Opeth and Metallica, so we had a much heavier sound than what they did in the 70s, so that version of it fit much better in our sort of performance there. But what a great song, and everything about it I think worked well. The drumming is great, the bass playing, the guitar playing, the singing, everything is good. And again, this is one of those songs where the production of it complemented it rather than hindered it, so I give it a perfect score.
Let's see, I can show that. No. Fuckity fuck. All right. We're going to have to just move on since I couldn't do that. Mainline.
Hang on, I didn't go.
Oh, did I forget you, Ken? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you were on such a roll. Didn't forget anyone during the whole episode, but now we fail. Okay.
Now we fail.
I'm useless. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I think I would like to. It's my favorite. I think it's my favorite song on the album. Obviously, it's a great song. The only ding I gave it was on lyrics. I think it could have been. It's not a perfect lyric. A 5 out of, come on. It's not a perfect lyric. But so I'm hard, on Gene sometimes. So, but I give it 27. I think it's a great song. I do agree with Where's Drago regarding that. I think it's better than actually. It doesn't get improved by going to Alive. I think it's perfect in this form. That's one of those type of songs where it's kind of like Unholy. Unholy is better on record than live. Those kind of songs. So yeah, it's a great song. It's tied for my 2 favorite songs on the album.
All right, so here's for Ken and for Where's Drago. You both gushed over the production as is on Hotter Than Hell for Watching You. How does it compare in your minds then to the Eddie Kramer March 73 demo?
Ooh. Yeah. That's a good one. It's a good question. I'd have to listen to it again. I know the Eddie Kramer one, and I remember it, but not. I think I would like this one better than the Eddie Kramer one, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think honestly, out of all of the ones from the Eddie Kramer demo, I think Watching You is the only one that I think is better on the studio album than the demo. I think the rest of the ones on the demo, I think I liked better than their album counterparts, like the proper studio ones. But this one, just because I think the guitar are kind of bordering on a little too under distorted, a little too ding, 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 a little too under distorted for my liking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds pretty.
I agree with that.
Bloody fantastic is a phrase that comes to mind for the song. All right, now we'll try and move on to Mainline. Peter Criss on the vocals. Mark. Mark's in Mark mode on this song. 8 points from Mark. Mark, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, look, you guys all know I love Peter Criss's vocals. I think he's a great singer. I love the sound of his voice. But really, that doesn't save this song at all. I mean, in my opinion, I think this is the song that I probably like the least on this record. It's just very pedestrian. It's very, sees it. Yeah, it's like almost like some AOR song that they put on this album. I don't think it has very much balls to it. It's very straightforward and simple. The fact that Peter Criss fought so hard to sing this one, I guess he wanted to sing something, but maybe Paul
Yeah.
was right to give him this one because it wasn't exactly a gem, and Paul probably couldn't even have helped it either if he sang it, right? So I just gave it all 2 across the line: 2 lyrics, 2 music, 2 taste. It's just one that they could have left on the cutting room floor, in my opinion, and put something else on.
Ken, mainline.
Yeah, I think this is the main reason that I kind of dinged the whole album on the cohesiveness.
Exactly.
This is a song that's kind of doesn't really fit in theme with the rest of the attitude. This song doesn't make sense as far as the attitude of the rest of the album. The one song that kind of, and maybe even the next song to a degree.
Yeah.
But mostly this song. Though I think it's a decent song. Yeah, lyrics 3 out of 5, melody 3 out of 5. It's kind of middle of the road kind of thing. And 2 on taste, and so it gets a 12 from me. So it's a little bit under par, I guess you could say. As far as a great kind of Kiss song, going up against all these other great songs on this album, it just kind of doesn't cut the mustard, I guess you could say.
Yeah, meet the standard of the rest of the material. I mean, my comments on this one are maybe filler, which it clearly is a throwaway, written fast. We need songs, but it's head bopping. I mean, it does have.
Yeah.
Peter sings the hell out of it. He does a great job.
He's great. He's great.
It's also got a really good solo, and I like the tone. But it's just basic rock and roll, and for that I can only give it 12 points. Because it's not a standout, especially when you weigh it against all the other material on the album. Daniel, 10 points from you.
Yeah, 10 points from me. I have to agree with what Ken said. It seems like me and Ken are on the same page today. 10 points, much of the same reasons. I think it sticks out like a sore thumb on the album. And I wish they would have used, because on Dressed to Kill they used a lot of old songs that they have done in Wicked Lester. Why not put She here instead of Mainline? Because She is one of those dark, disturbed songs that would have worked perfectly on Harder Than Hell. So that was a mistake. They should have left this one. This would have actually worked better on Dressed to Kill, I think, because that's more of a happy-go-lucky album. More of a pop album. This is a dark album. So if you could have switched Mainline with She, I think both songs would have benefited from that. So 10 points. Well, it's all right, and I always enjoy Peter Criss vocals on a Kiss album. But for me, it's one of the weaker songs on the album.
Yeah, good, very good point there. All right, did I get everyone for this? Because I'm reading ahead for the next song.
Yeah, I think you did.
All right. Well, Lonnie gave it 16, so he just likes his rock and roll. All right. Coming Home. I told myself when I was re-reviewing all of these songs that I had to separate myself from hearing and loving the unplugged versions. And I just don't know whether I was successful in doing so, because I gave it 21 points on this because I love the lyrics. I love the melody. I love the song. But I think I've probably failed to separate myself from how damn good it is on MTV Unplugged with what it was in 1974. And I'll admit that sometimes it's very difficult to make that differentiation because it doesn't, with the production, this is one of the songs that really doesn't sound great on the album, but I think it's a damn good song nonetheless. And it's another of the songs that getting to actually witness live pseudo acoustically has just been one of those great moments. So I'm utterly polluted by other factors in my vote for this song, and I admit it. Let's go from one extreme to the other. Mark, 12 points.
Yeah, I mean, I had no problem separating myself in this one because I remember the very first time I heard this song, I thought that I honestly, like, especially when I bought it on vinyl, I actually went back, took the needle up grabbed my cleaner for the needle and cleaned it because I thought that maybe something was on my like dust or something on there because it was so
wrong with
muddy
this?
sounding and so it didn't sound clear at all. I was like, what is
Dusty.
going on here? And I put it back on. I'm like, no, that's just the way it was. It's just I don't know. I don't know if this is the last song they mixed on the album, and they were like, "We got to get this record out of here. Hurry up! Just put the faders up, put a little bit of verb on here, and then that's it." You know, it didn't sound like it got nearly as much attention to detail on this. Lyrically, I did give it a 3.5 because I do think that the lyrics kind of are decent, and it kind of touches that part of me as a musician who toured and was away from home. I understand the sentiment of the lyrics, so I did give it a bit of a higher ranking because of that. But musically, I gave it a 2.5. It's okay. I gave it the extra half because it's the first, or probably the only Ace and Paul co-write together that ever probably happened. So give it a bit of a heads up for that. And I gave it a 2 for taste, so I gave it a 12. But again, this is the one time, and I'm being totally serious about that, about the whole needle cleaning thing, because that was almost shocking to me how muddy this song is in comparison with some of the rest of it, and the whole album was kind of suffers from that a little bit, I think, but this one especially.
This is another one though that's fun to play on the guitar. That opening riff, just the first section is real fun to play. Let's see, who's next? I went.
I haven't said anything.
Daniel, like,
well,
yeah,
coming
you gave
home,
me a
I
good
think
score.
much like Julian, the first time I realized that it was some sort of good song was was when I heard Unplugged, of course, and it worked so well as an opening track on that album, and they often open the set list with that song on that tour they did around the USA, the Unplugged, the Conventions tour. But on the album it's sort of a lackluster song. But still, I think I am affected by the way it sounded on Unplugged. So I think that might, affect me a bit when I put the points to Coming Home, because I gave it 18 points. Not one of my favorites on the album, but still a pretty good song. I like the message, being away, longing for home, missing your partner and waiting to get home. I think it's kind of a story in the song, and I always liked it when Paul wrote those kind of songs, like when he told a story, like Hide Your Heart or stuff like that, even though Hide Your Heart was sort of a rip-off of Bon Jovi, but the storytelling, I kind of like that. Not like Gene did in the mid-80s, just throw a bunch of words into the song and hope it works. It was well thought out. He had a story to tell, and I think the way the song sounds kind of works well with the message. It's a happy-go-lucky song, longing for home, and I think it works. 18 points.
All right. Well, Lonnie and Ken both gave it 16 points. So Ken, tell us why Lonnie gave it 16.
I can't speak for Lonnie. Did anybody else hear a drum beat?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Like a
It might
bass.
be my neighbor. I might.
Oh, tell him to turn that music down over there. Okay. Anyway, I was wondering where that's.
I thought it was my neighbor. That's why I turned down my mic. I thought it was mine.
Neighbors. Anyway, okay, that's funny. So Coming Home. Yeah, it is much better outside on unplugged and that kind of thing. And the lyrics are pretty good. I like the lyrics. The melody is good, but as far as taste for Kiss, this is not, at least doesn't sound that Kiss like on this album. So it's same thing like with Mainline and Coming Home. Those two songs kind of stick out. So I only gave it a 16. It's a good song, but it's one of the my least favorite ones on this album.
It's the last week of October. I am not answering the fucking phone, and I'm deleting text as rapidly as I can. I have had enough of all this shit that's going on in the United States of America at this time.
You have to
Yes.
So let's
block.
get back. And it's an appropriate segue into the last song, Strange Ways. Another mighty Ace Frehley song that goes so well with the sonics of the album, in my humble opinion. It's an absolutely fantastic song. It's not, I gave it 24 points. I don't think it's his best on this album, but Ace is on fire on this album in terms of his contributions. I don't think anyone will ever know exactly what Ace contributed to Coming Home, because Paul doesn't remember and Ace sure doesn't. But he's on that. And he's got Parasite and Strange Ways, which are two of the very strongest songs on this album, songs that still regularly get performed live by his solo band. So I think that says it all. It is such a, in terms of its character, it is such a great song, and musically it's fun. I remember 95 when they were doing this, with Richie. It was super fun back then to catch on all the bootlegs. It's been one that's been, one of the go-tos live in concert, and it's one that's been thoroughly neglected by Kiss over the years. Utterly. I think he got a couple of outings during the Hotter Than Hell tour, allegedly. I don't,
The Kiss
and
Cruise,
Peter.
I think.
Yeah, maybe. I just don't remember. I don't have all these things on the brain anymore. So I really like the song a lot. 24. Ken, you also gave it 24.
Yeah, it's it's a great song by Ace. It's interesting. It's a cool way to end the album. At least it goes out kind of like on a bang in a way. The lyrics are pretty cool. I give it a 4 out of 5. Melody 4 out of 5. Mostly because the guitar solo, the wild guitar solo, I mean, it gets extra for me for Ace's solo in that. It's really great. It's just the mood of it, and then Peter's singing on it, of course, is great. It just all fits perfectly on the song. So taste 3 out of 3 for me. 24. Yep, I love it.
All right, Daniel, you're gonna have to come off mute to pontificate with your
this
justification of perfection.
Yeah, this is a great song. I gave it 30 out of 30. Of course, Peter Criss's singing is off the charts. The solo from Ace Frehley is often mentioned by Ace himself as his favorite Kiss solo of all time. So even he likes this one. The lyrics, of course, I like the lyrics. It's much in the vein of Watching You or some of these dark, moody, strange lyrics that fit the album perfectly. The drumming from Peter Criss is really cool. And I do recall Eric Singer doing this with his sort of solo band. I don't know if it was the Eric Singer Project or Glam Nation, but it sounded great as well. And I think they did it on a cruise or two with Eric Singer singing it. I don't know if it was the Sail Away concert or if it was in the actual concert, but I remember appreciating them doing it in the later years as well. So unfortunately they didn't. It never became a staple in the set. It could have been. It was a great song for the drummer to sing. I would have loved to hear Eric Carr sing this one, in the 80s with that raspy voice, putting it, having him singing it on that Animalized Live Uncensored would have been just awesome. Instead of, even though he did a fine job on that Lick It Up song he sang, but this would have been really something. Eric Carr singing this on Animal Live Uncensored. But unfortunately it wasn't meant to be, but still one of the greatest Ace Frehley songs. And also it was good that he didn't sing it himself. So perfect vocals, cool drumming, great guitar sound, and once again the production does this song justice. It works with how the production sounds. So great song.
Okay, Mark, you gave it a very strong score as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had an issue with this song. I always thought it was a very, very strong song. What a great way to end the album too, with putting this song on there. Ace, I think, was again on a roll writing wise with this. Good idea to give it to Peter instead of Gene for this one. I think Peter's voice suited it a bit better. Lyrics, I gave it a 4. Musically, I gave it a 5. Perfect score with that, and a 3 for taste. So 27 I gave it. The one thing about this song that I find very interesting is everybody mentions the guitar solo of this song, how fantastic it is and how weird and stuff like that is. And I agree 100% with it. I'm not knocking it at all, but I think that's also the reason why they never play it, is because I don't think that he was ever able to recreate this guitar solo the way it's on record, just because of the way that the sort of the happy accidents that happened that created the sound of this solo. It's just not something that you can do in a controlled environment. It's like he kind of like, "Hi, Curly, I kind of stumbled upon this solo." You know, like he kind of, the sound of it, everything kind of was an accident. So for him to recreate that, I think he had a hard time doing it. I think that's why they didn't ever put the song live on there. You know, so, but overall, I think it's a great song, and I think that. I'm more surprised that the 90s version of the band didn't try it. You know, I can maybe see in the 70s that they didn't have some of the tech or some pedals or something like that could have helped them recreate it. But the 90s, they probably could have did it, but maybe it just wasn't a favorite amongst the band members or something. Who knows? But for me, it's a great song.
Yeah, who was it that said they'd love to? Daniel, I think it was you who said you'd love to hear Eric Carr sing it. I'd love to hear Eric Singer singing it, for that matter. With his voice, and also that dinosaur band. I mean, it's magnificent. That really became kind of a signature trait for Ace and those big bands that he'd do. So I was just flipping through the draft of Ace book to see if he had said the same thing Daniel had, and there's a lot on Hotter Than Hell in there. So when the time comes for that, it should be exciting. All right, let's talk about MVP on this album, because we've talked a lot about Ace. We've talked a lot about Gene. We've said a fair amount about Peter singing, not so much about his drumming, unfortunately. I guess we needed a drummer on the show. And also Paul. Who do you think is the MVP of Hotter Than Hell as it was? And again, we've totally thrown production and the sound of the album out of the equation today, because there's just no point in going over that. Who's the MVP for you, Mark?
That's very hard, to be honest with you, because I think everybody kind of did things that were, you know, admirable on this record. But I think that where this album did really well, and I think why it is as loved as much as it is, I'm going to give it to Ace, because I think without Parasite, without Strange Ways, and some of the solos and stuff like that he's done in this record, I don't think it would have been nearly as classic. I think those two songs pushed that record over the edge for me a little bit. So I'm gonna give it to Ace.
All right, Daniel, how about you?
Well, I think it's one of the few albums where the MVP is actually the group. I think it's a group effort. You know, Peter bringing his great vocals, Ace Frehley bringing just enough of Ace tunes in order to make the album exciting, and Gene bringing, I think, 4 or 5 songs to the album, and most of them are stellar. And Paul, of course, is always bringing stuff. Maybe Paul is not as dominant as we're used to. So
that's like a tie answer.
Yeah, it is.
That's not a definitive answer.
Yeah. But if I would have to pick, if you force me to pick one one MVP, I think I'd go with Ace, because his songs are stellar.
All right. Yeah, I like that answer a lot, because it's very tough to kind of separate it. But for me, it really is between Ace and Gene on this album. Both of them are heavyweight contenders, and Paul does fall a little bit just takes a step down in a way and allows them both to shine. Ace with his song contributions, even if Peter's singing and Gene singing one, and obviously the contributions are third. But when I was separating, I was trying to work on remasters of this and separating out the tracks into stems, and just focusing in on the guitar work for me really does give it to Ace. For me, the lead work all over this album is just a guy who's finding his feet, and really becoming secure in an identity of his own. Whereas Gene is Gene. Gene is, Gene, you're always getting kind of the same character, the same sorts of quirky songs. But here was a very productive Ace. And it really was, dinosaur bands, just very nicely constructed solos. He was never like Paul, who would sit and think about it and map it out in his head and want to tell a story with a solo. Ace was just fucking lock and load and blast, so that really comes across for me. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to Gene, because again, Gene is outstanding on Hotter Than Hell. Ken.
Yeah, I'm going to go with kind of the same thing in a way. Gene and Ace for me, kind of, and I'm going to do the tie thing there. That Mark doesn't like, but
ties.
I think for Gene and Ace with Peter just slightly behind, because I think his drumming on this is great. I think I was kind of listening to the drums, and though they don't sound the greatest, the way this production is, he was on it, and he was doing really great stuff. So I think that was a big part and then Paul slightly behind, because it seemed like he was kind of off his, a little bit off his game, as far as I think songwriting. That's where that goes for me. So yeah, Gene and Ace at the top.
Well, had he been sick at the end of the Kiss tour, and they'd postponed a whole bunch of dates so that he could have surgery on his throat or vocals or something like that? I don't know that he just had to recheck his book and the history, So I don't think he was off his game, because Hotter Than Hell is a great song. Yeah. Got to Choose is a great song, and he's bringing it all, and the rhythm playing's perfectly, solid throughout the album. So I don't know if he was off his game. Yeah, that's kind of it. I got to go through the songs before I forget. So what is the overall ranking of the songs on Hotter Than Hell from this panel on this day? And as always, these will change. They're already invalid. Mainline in last place on 58 points. Coming Home right behind or in front of it on 83. Let Me Go Rock and Roll on 88 points. All the Way on 91. Going Blind on 92. That's the bottom half of our ranking. Is there any shock to those? I don't think so. No. Getting into the top half, Got to Choose on 106.5. Thanks, Mark. Mark turned Got to Choose into a radio station. You got to choose. Tune into 106.5. All right, Strange Ways on 119. That's a substantial jump, so we're into the creme de la creme. Hotter Than Hell, 120. Only just pipping Strange Ways. Parasite, substantial jump up into 136.5, and the champion, the hottest of the hot on Hotter Than Hell, is Watching You, a outcast, a leftover, a reject from the Kiss demo, ignored.
What about if you compare the album? If you compare the album comparison, rated, I think this will rate kind of high.
It does rate very high. It's the highest rated album so far that we've done a refocused of. Pipping. I'm sorry, just close the
first
file.
album.
So yeah, and let me just.
Gotta be close.
Yeah, I'm in my Dropbox trying to find it. All right, here we go. All right. Now just waiting for Microsoft to fucking open. Garbage. All right. So Hotter Than Hell comes in with a cumulative score, and that's adding the production score with the overall song scores, and then dividing it by the number of songs on the album, dividing that by the 5 participants. 24.69 points. How does that compare with the other albums? Well, it takes us into top position. It is so far the highest ranked Kiss album that we've reviewed this year, with Kiss, the debut, just falling ever slightly behind it. And I mean, it's negligible. 24.67. So we believe that Kiss and Hotter Than Hell, with their flaws of their sonics, with their, any other artistic things that you could criticize either of those Kerner and Wise produced albums about, are equal. That they are very strong albums, that they are stronger than Sonic Boom, that they are stronger than Animalize,
and Hot in the
that they are
Shade.
stronger than Hot in the Shade, and they're even stronger than Dynasty on 23.67 points. So right now, Hotter Than Hell is the best album in the Kiss FAQ podcast Refocused series, and that I'm actually surprised at. I thought that the debut would be the other way around, just ever so slightly ahead of it. So there we are. That's the last Refocused for 2024, unless we're stupid enough to decide to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Millennium Concert.
No,
I don't know. Maybe with a few beers on New Year's Eve, looking back and just doing a live reaction video to that. There's a couple of other things from this week just to cover quickly before we sign off. There were 2 other episodes thrown up on the YouTube channel this week. One was my review of the Hotter Than Hell merch. I just run through everything there, so that's up if you should so desire to hear me spouting on that for 10 minutes. And then I did an episode with Andy, who's put together the Kiss Cruisers Reunion Cruise, which will be a Caribbean cruise, just a regular one going out that a whole bunch of former cruisers are just going to go on for fun to get back on the high seas. It's not a Kiss
sounds like a great
cruise. It's just a regular cruise that they're all going to attend, and there'll be things going on in Miami prior to that sailing in October 2025. So hear all about it. Everyone who's knows Andy, who've seen him on this show over the years, knows that he's a passionate, positive fan who celebrates the band perpetually. And he's always looking for new ways. They go on these cruises, and it's just a way to invite friends so that you've got a group of people with a common interest who can get together and do some of the things during the stops and during the cruise. So it sounds like a great idea. Check out that episode.
But Julian, we haven't mentioned the elephant in the room. What is your take on the 3 sides catastrophe? Just personally, I think the title was wrong for the episode. There's nothing wrong with the episode. I think it's just a title that is wrong. It's clickbait. But if you listen to what Mark has, is it called? What's the name? Mark Chikine, is it called that? I think he has great points. Mm-hmm. What about you, Mark?
I actually watched the episode, and I didn't have any problem with it. I thought the first half where Mark was talking about some of the things that are going on RE Pop House were interesting, and I didn't find anything. It's just 2 fans talking, and then there was another video that came out yesterday, which was kind of taking people to task for judging it by its title, differentiating between puffing and fluffing. That Kiss is a band that is all about puffing up, and clickbait titles, it does sometimes backfire. We've done a few clicky bait type things. I'm just not comfortable, doing that very often. But I don't really have an opinion because, again, I listened to both episodes, and in terms of content, don't always judge a book by its cover is also another way of saying it, that a title is just a title. It's flippant. It's thrown away. It is designed to get your attention to watch it. And ultimately, it's advertising people got so upset, and it did take a dark turn, as always, because when people get upset, they do fucking stupid things, pardon my French. And if someone was threatening family members because of a dumb podcast title, come on, this is a Kiss podcast. That's just idiotic if anyone's making threats about someone's family member because of a podcast about music where it's just fans riffing is absolutely idiotic.
I have to say, it's kind of interesting that Bruce Kulick made such a noise about the title. Normally, he's not that sort of guy. He must have had a
but he's the gatekeeper for that era.
Yep.
Bruce is the only one.
That's true.
Eric's not doing that for his
era. It's interesting that
Eric Carr is gone. Of course he did. That's his
Yeah,
era.
but it's interesting
Doesn't
that he
like-
actually did. I think it's a good thing that he reacted, actually, because mainly he's such a team player.
Yeah, I want to say this about Bruce, and I haven't talked to him about any of this. Way back in 1999, I did my first ever interview with a member of KISS with Bruce, thanks to Keith LaRue at the Expo and Mike Brandvold as well, at the KISS Expo in Indy. And I phrased a question in a way that maybe had seemed a little bit negative about KISS. And he took me to task. He said, "That's not the right way to be phrasing that. That's wrong. I don't like that. Say it a different way." And he was defensive, and I'm not going to say defensive because that seems to have a negative connotation. He was protective of that era of his band, his work, his contributions to it. And when you look at what has happened, I understand it, because that whole era of history has been whitewashed away to a large degree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And yes, we have had Hotter Than Hell, Hot in the Shade, anniversary editions and Poughkeepsie off the soundboards. But to a large degree, the non-originals era has, rightfully to a degree, taken a back seat to everything that came later. And that's got to hurt. So I don't think he reacted. I think the point from the Three Sides guys was that he didn't listen to it, and he reacted only to the title without. There you go. That's the dangers of clickbait. That's the dangers of puffing. Stick to fluffing, or be on the receiving side of the fluffing. It's the risk that you do. Sometimes you reach out, and again, I've had hubris. I've set myself up for something, and I've fallen into a massive hole with bigger damage, and they only pissed off Bruce. I pissed off an original and a producer. So step up your game, guys. I want to close with just two other quick things. Is the KISS Aussie Worldwide Collectors Group on Facebook, run by Phil Cass, celebrated its 11th anniversary. So congratulations to them. They did a fundraiser for the Peter Mac Cancer Foundation, raising over 7,000 Australian dollars. That is brilliant. That is the positivity that comes out of a KISS community when people put their minds into action to do something positive outside the music. Amen. And everyone's been touched by disease, cancers, and more heinous stuff. So that is very worthy. And finally, going back to 1980 and the Unmasked tour, Paul Di'Anno died.
Yes.
The original or one of the early lead singers for Iron Maiden. And that's just a reminder. He was, 65, 66 years old, sang on the first two albums, and I prefer Killers to the self-titled debut. All of our heroes and the musicians that we loved are getting older. Sit back, enjoy that time, those memories, the albums, the music, and don't sweat the bullshit like clickbait titles. Because at the end of the day, none of that matters. It's the music, it's the community, and everything else that goes along with it that really does matter. And if you disagree with me, fine. It's only an opinion. Don't get upset about it.
Mother.
All right. So that's it for this week. Hotter Than Hell, Refocused. Go listen to that album. Play it loud. Enjoy it in all its sonic glory. Mark has another interruption. He's raising his hand like he's in class.
Just really one more thing quickly, and I know you'll find this humorous because I'm always referring back to the same guy, but this is extremely important. Mr. Drago, I'm just going to say one last thing. I did respond to your thing, and I sent you that information that you asked for. So I just need you to respond back to me. Thank you. No, it's pretty important. You would know. I'll tell you offline.
Mark's only form of communication.
I must break.
Yes, it is. Ironically.
Well, at least he's not like doing World War II flag signals in the background while we're talking, communicating to the other ship.
I surrender.
All right, that's it from Mark, from Lonnie, the absentee, Daniel, and Ken, and myself. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.